What happens when you take one of the world's largest snakes and turn it into a watercolor painting? Well, apparently, you get an anaconda that looks surprisingly cute and slightly terrifying. Today, we're traveling to Latin America to paint this beautiful, powerful, slithering giant, one layer at a time. Let's start our sketch with the head of the anaconda and then use a series of overlapping circles, getting a little bit larger as we move along the body. These simple shapes help us create those dramatic coils and keep the snake from turning into one giant confusing noodle. I'm using a yellow ochre watercolor pencil for the sketch because it will blend beautifully into the watercolor as we paint. And don't worry about making your sketch perfect, we're really just creating a roadmap for the painting. Now let's add a light golden wash over the body, creating the anaconda's base layer. Keep the first layer fairly diluted. Watercolor is all about building gradually, so we're not trying to get all the color and contrast in one go. Next, I'll use slightly more saturated brush strokes along the sides of the body. Following the curve of the snake with a brush helps create the illusion of roundness and depth. And yes, we're basically painting a very fancy noodle. Now comes one of my favorite parts. Let's add those beautiful olive green diamond patterns that are characteristic of anacondas. I'm using large, loose brushstrokes rather than trying to make every marking identical. Nature isn't perfectly symmetrical, and those little variations are what make the painting feel more organic. While those colors dry, let's move into the surrounding landscape. I'll add a light base layer to the leaves and the ground slowly, establishing the environment around our snake. And here's something that makes anacondas considerably less cute in real life. Green anacondas are among the heaviest snakes in the world, and they spend much of their time in and around water. They're excellent swimmers, using their powerful bodies to move through rivers, wetlands, and flooded forests. So while our patient anaconda is happily posing for us, a real one would probably be much more interested in quietly disappearing into the water. Now, let's bring this painting to life with contrast. I'll add a darker wash around the edges of the snake and reinforce those diamond-shaped markings with more saturated paint. Notice how much more dimensional the body begins to look simply by darkening the areas around the coils. This is one of the things I love about watercolor. You don't necessarily need more detail. Sometimes you just need the right contrast in the right place. Once the layer has dried, I'll switch to a thinner brush to carefully define the outline of the snake. This is especially important around the coils. We want to be able to clearly see where one section of the body curves over another, rather than ending up with one enormous green blob. While the snake dries, let's give the leaves a little more personality too. I'll add darker greens, stronger edges, and a few variations in tone to create texture and depth. And remember, if you're painting along with me, don't feel like you have to keep up with the video. Some sections are sped up, so pause whenever you need to catch up. Watercolor already has enough surprises. There's no reason to turn your painting session into a race. Now that our Anaconda is completely dry, we can start working on those tiny details. With an even smaller brush, I'll define the mouth and eye, and then add a little U and V-shaped marks throughout the body to suggest scales. Some marks will be darker, some lighter. The goal isn't to paint every single scale. Instead, we're creating the impression of texture. Sometimes a few carefully placed marks can tell the viewer's brain, yep, that's definitely a snake. And here's another fascinating thing about anacondas. They're constrictors, which means they don't use venom to subdue their prey. Instead, they rely on their powerful bodies to overpower it. Anacondas can eat a surprisingly varied diet, including fish, birds, reptiles, and mammals, which makes our cheerful little watercolor snake perhaps a little more intimidating when you think about what happens outside the painting. Now it's time to bring the ground into the picture. I'll add darker tones underneath and around the snake to increase contrast and help define its shape against the landscape. Then we'll continue moving back and forth between the snake and the environment. A little more pigment here, a little more shadow there. Let it dry. Take another look, then decide where the painting needs just a little more. That's really the rhythm of watercolor. Layer, dry, observe, repeat. For the final touches, I'm using a dark brown watercolor pencil to strengthen some of the markings and parts of the outline. And there's a little surprise that unfortunately doesn't show up very well on camera. The yellow and olive green areas have a beautiful shimmer because I use metallic watercolor paints. So this snake has a little sparkle too, because apparently being one of the largest snakes in the world wasn't enough. And there she is. I know. This anaconda looks surprisingly harmless. Dare I say cute? She looks happy, friendly, and completely comfortable being part of our growing collection of incredible animals from Latin America. And that's exactly what I love about this series. We are not just painting animals, we're traveling through their habitats, learning a little about their places they call home, and discovering how much personality can fit into a piece of paper. If you're enjoying this journey, make sure to explore the entire Travel the World One Painting at a Time series here on the channel. We've already visited some amazing destinations, and there are many more animals and places waiting for us. Until next time, keep experimenting, keep painting, and remember to find joy in the small details. Happy painting!